My name is Allison Crawford, and 6 months ago, I had what most people would call a perfect life. I had a husband who kissed me goodbye every morning, a sister who called me her best friend, parents who proudly displayed my nursing degree on their mantel, a small house with a garden I'd planted myself, where tomatoes grew fat and red in the summer sun. Then I came home early from a double shift and found my husband in our bed with my sister. Not just once. Not a drunken mistake. 18 months, they'd been doing this. 18 months of family dinners where they'd smiled at me across the table. 18 months of my sister asking to borrow my clothes, my car, my trust, while she was sleeping with Marcus in the house I'd bought with money from the extra shifts I worked. Now I was sitting in a courtroom, listening to my mother explain to a judge why I should pay child support for their baby. The air tasted like old wood polish and my father's cologne, the same scent that used to mean safety when I was little. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, making everything look slightly green, slightly sick. I could hear my sister Natalie breathing from 3 rows behind me, that quick rabbit breath she got when she was nervous. "Your Honor," my mother said, standing in her church dress, the blue one with the white collar. "Allison has always been the responsible one. The one with the good job, the savings account. It's only fair that she helps support her nephew, especially since she's still legally married to the father." My fingernails dug crescents into my palms. Judge Morrison looked tired. His glasses sat crooked on his nose, and there was a coffee stain on his robe that he probably didn't know about. "Mrs. Patterson, I'm not sure you understand how child support works." "I understand that my grandson needs formula and diapers," my mother said, her voice cracking in that practiced way that had gotten me grounded more times than I could count when Natalie blamed me for things I didn't do. "I understand that Allison has money and refuses to help her own family." Before I go further, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I like to know how far my stories are reaching, and a like and subscribe means a lot to small channels like ours and will keep these stories coming. Now let's continue. I stood up slowly. My lawyer, a kind woman named Patricia who'd taken my case for half her usual fee because she had a cheating ex-husband too, put her hand on my arm. I shook my head. "I'd like to speak, Your Honor." Marcus looked up for the first time since we'd entered the courtroom. My husband of 7 years sat next to Natalie, holding her hand like they were the fairy tale and I was the villain. He was wearing the suit I'd bought him for our anniversary, the navy one that brought out his eyes. Those blue eyes that used to make my stomach flip now just made me feel cold. "Mrs. Crawford," the judge said, "your lawyer can—" "I don't need to prove my innocence," I said, my voice steady even though my hands were shaking. "I only need to prove they're guilty as well." The courtroom went quiet. Even the bailiff, who'd been scrolling on his phone, looked up. Natalie laughed, that high-pitched sound she made when she was lying. "Guilty? Allison, you're being dramatic. This isn't a crime. We fell in love. It happens." She was wearing my sweater, the green cashmere one I'd gotten for Christmas. My fingers tightened on the leather portfolio in my lap, feeling the weight of the papers inside. "Tell them about the money, Nat." Her laugh cut off like someone had flipped a switch. Marcus's head whipped toward her. "What money?" My father shifted in his seat, his hand going to his jacket pocket, patting it like he was looking for something. The overhead lights caught the silver in his hair, making him look older than I remembered. When had he gotten so old? $50,000, I said, opening the portfolio. The papers inside were organized by color-coded tabs, each one a different piece of the puzzle I'd been putting together for 3 months. From Mom and Dad's retirement account, withdrawn 8 months ago, 3 months before the baby was born. My mother's face went white. Actually white, like someone had painted over her features with primer. "Allison," my father said, standing up. His voice had that warning tone, the one that used to make me apologize even when I'd done nothing wrong. "That's private family business. So is asking me to pay child support for my husband's affair baby, Dad, but you seemed fine making that public." Judge Morrison leaned forward. Mrs. Crawford, where are you going with this? I pulled out the first set of documents. Bank statements, highlighted in yellow. The withdrawal was signed by two people. My father, whose account it was. I looked at Natalie. She was gripping Marcus's hand so tight her knuckles had gone white. And my sister. That doesn't mean anything, Natalie said, but her voice was too high, too fast. Dad needed help with the paperwork. You know he doesn't see well. I see fine, my father snapped. The room held its breath. Then tell us, I said softly, where the money went. Natalie stood up so fast her chair fell backward. The crash echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. You have no right. I have every right. Because 10,000 of those dollars came from an account with my name on it. The joint savings account Marcus and I opened to buy a bigger house. I pulled out another document. The account Natalie had access to because I'd added her as an emergency contact when Marcus was traveling for work. Marcus's face had gone from confused to horrified. You took money from our account? It was for the baby, Natalie said, tears starting now, the ones she could turn on like a faucet. Our baby. I needed. You needed a down payment on the condo you bought downtown, I said. The one in your name only. The one Marcus doesn't even know about. The courtroom door opened. Everyone turned. Two people walked in. The first was Daniel Chen, the forensic accountant I'd hired with the last of my savings. He wore a gray suit and carried a briefcase that probably held enough evidence to bury my sister. The second person made my mother gasp. Detective Sarah Morrison, in full uniform, her badge catching the fluorescent light. She looked exactly like her father, the judge, same nose, same tired eyes. Judge Morrison's face went carefully blank. Detective. This is unexpected. Sorry to interrupt, Dad, Sarah said. Her voice was professional, cool. But we've had a fraud report filed, and it involves parties currently in this courtroom. We need to ask some questions. Natalie was already moving toward the side door, but the bailiff, suddenly very alert, stepped in front of it. Marcus looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the moment he understood. What did you do? I smiled. It felt strange on my face, like I'd forgotten how. I stopped being the person you could use. My father was staring at Natalie. Tell me you didn't. Tell me you didn't steal from your own parents. But Natalie wasn't looking at him. She was looking at Marcus, and her face was doing something complicated, something between panic and rage. This is your fault, she hissed at him. You said she'd never find out. You said she was too busy working to notice. The words hung in the air like smoke. Daniel Chen opened his briefcase. The click of the latches sounded unnaturally loud. Your Honor, I have documentation of multiple fraudulent transactions, including identity theft, forged signatures, and embezzlement. If I may approach. Judge Morrison nodded, his face carved from stone. As Daniel walked forward, Marcus stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. Natalie, what the hell is he talking about? My sister's face crumpled. Real tears now, not the practiced ones. I was going to pay it back. I just needed time. The baby, the expenses, I couldn't. You bought a condo, I said quietly. A 2-bedroom condo in your name, with money you stole from our parents and from me. My mother made a sound like she'd been punched. Detective Morrison pulled out handcuffs. That's when Natalie ran. Natalie made it exactly 4 steps before the bailiff caught her arm. She screamed, actually screamed, like he was hurting her when all he'd done was hold her elbow. The sound bounced off the wood-paneled walls, sharp and desperate. I watched her thrash against his grip, her face red, mascara already starting to run, and felt absolutely nothing. That was the strangest part. I'd imagined this moment 1,000 times in the last 3 months, lying awake at night in the studio apartment I'd rented after leaving the house. I'd thought I'd feel vindicated, triumphant, something hot and satisfying. Instead, I just felt tired.
Let go of me.
Natalie's voice cracked. She looked at our mother, her eyes wide and wet. Mom, tell them I was going to pay it back. Our mother sat frozen in her seat, her purse clutched in her lap like a shield. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. She looked smaller somehow, like she was folding in on herself. Detective Morrison moved forward, her boots clicking on the tile floor. Ma'am, I need you to calm down. We just want to ask you some questions. I don't have to answer anything, Natalie spat. She turned to Marcus, her free hand reaching for him. Tell them I didn't do anything wrong. But Marcus was staring at me, his face pale under the fluorescent lights. How long have you known about the affair? I kept my voice level. 6 months. About the money. I glanced at Daniel Chen, who was laying out bank statements on the judge's bench like cards in a game of solitaire. 3 months. That's when I hired Daniel to look into our finances. I wanted to know what I'd be dealing with in the divorce. Divorce, Marcus repeated. He said it like it was a foreign word. What did you think was going to happen? The question came out harder than I meant it to. Did you think I'd just forgive you? Help you raise the baby you had with my sister in my bed? Judge Morrison cleared his throat. His face had gone carefully neutral, but I could see the muscle ticking in his jaw. Mr. Chen, what exactly are we looking at here? Daniel adjusted his glasses. He had a quiet voice, the kind that made people lean in to listen. Initially, Mrs. Crawford hired me to document marital assets for divorce proceedings. During that investigation, I discovered several irregularities. Withdrawals from accounts that Mrs. Crawford had access to, but didn't authorize. When we dug deeper, we found a pattern. He pulled out another document, this one marked with red tabs. Over the course of 18 months, Natalie Patterson systematically withdrew funds from 3 separate accounts. The joint savings account belonging to Allison and Marcus Crawford. A retirement account belonging to Thomas and Linda Patterson, her parents. And a checking account that Mrs. Crawford had added her as a secondary user on for emergency purposes. How much? My father asked. His voice sounded hollow, like it was coming from the bottom of a well. Total. Daniel looked at his papers. $73,412. My mother made a choking sound. That's not, I didn't. Natalie's voice got higher, more frantic. Some of that was for the baby. For things he needed. A $6,000 handbag isn't something a baby needs, I said quietly. Neither is a lease on a BMW. Or the condo. Marcus was still staring at me, but now his expression had shifted to something like horror. You bought a condo? Natalie's mouth opened and closed. The bailiff still held her arm, and she'd stopped struggling, but she was shaking now, her whole body trembling like a leaf in wind. It was supposed to be for us, she whispered. For you and me and the baby. Somewhere that wasn't hers first. Somewhere that was just ours. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He actually stepped back, his hand going to his chest. You stole from your parents to buy us a condo? I was going to tell you. I wanted it to be a surprise. You're 24 years old, my father said. He'd stood up at some point, though I hadn't seen when. His hands were shaking. You stole our retirement money to play house? I'm not playing. Natalie's tears were coming faster now, snot running from her nose. She looked young suddenly, like the little sister who used to follow me around, who I'd read bedtime stories to when our parents worked late. I love him. I love Marcus, and he loves me, and Allison never appreciated him anyway. She was always working, always too tired, always. Paying the mortgage, I finished. Buying groceries. Keeping the lights on while Marcus worked on his photography business that never made a dime. Marcus flinched. Detective Morrison pulled out a small notebook. Miss Patterson, I'm going to need you to come down to the station to answer some questions. You have the right to remain silent. Wait. My mother finally found her voice. She stood up, her purse falling to the floor, lipstick and tissues spilling out. Wait, please. She's my daughter. Can't we work this out as a family? I almost laughed. Almost. We're not a family, Mom. Families don't do this to each other. Allison, please. She moved toward me, her hand outstretched. Her nails were painted the same pink she always wore, the same shade she'd had on when she stood at my wedding, crying happy tears. I know you're hurt, but Natalie made a mistake. We can fix this. We can pay you back.
With what money?
The question came from my father. He was looking at my mother like he'd never seen her before. Linda, our retirement account is almost empty. How are we going to pay anyone back? We'll figure it out. We always figure it out. By asking Allison to bail us out again? His voice got louder. By making her responsible for cleaning up Natalie's mess like she's been doing since they were kids? The courtroom felt too small suddenly, the air too thick. I could smell my mother's perfume, the same white diamonds she'd worn my whole life. It mixed with the wood polish and made my stomach turn. Daniel Chen was still laying out papers. There's also the matter of the forged signatures. Mrs. Patterson, several of these withdrawal slips have your signature, but the handwriting analysis shows. I didn't know, my mother said quickly. Too quickly. I sign things all the time. I don't always read.
Mom.
I looked at her, really looked at her. Did you know what Natalie was doing? Silence. It stretched out, thin and fragile as spider silk. She needed help, my mother finally whispered. The baby was coming, and Marcus didn't have steady work, and you were being so stubborn about the divorce. The floor felt like it was tilting under my feet.
You knew.
I didn't know about your account. I swear, Allison, I didn't know she'd taken money from you and Marcus. Just the retirement fund, and I thought it was fine because it would all stay in the family anyway, and what? I just keep working myself to death to support all of you. My father sat down hard, his face gray.
Linda, tell me you didn't.
But she was looking at me, her eyes pleading. You've always been fine on your own. You've never needed us the way Natalie does. She's sensitive, she needs more support. She's a thief, I said. The word felt clean coming out, sharp and true. And you helped her. Detective Morrison looked at her father. Some silent communication passed between them. Judge Morrison's face had gone from neutral to carved stone. Detective, he said quietly, I'm recusing myself from this case. Clear conflict of interest. He looked at my mother, and something in his expression made her take a step back. Mrs. Patterson, I suggest you contact a lawyer.
What?
No, I didn't do anything illegal, You aided in the theft and fraudulent use of funds, Daniel said, his quiet voice cutting through her protests. That makes you an accessory. The courtroom door opened again. 2 uniformed officers walked in, and I recognized one of them from the police report I'd filed 3 weeks ago. Officer Martinez, young and professional, who'd listened to my whole story without judgment and told me to document everything. We'll need statements from everyone, Detective Morrison said. She was looking at me now, her expression softer. Mrs. Crawford, are you pressing charges? 4 faces turned to me. My sister, mascara streaking down her cheeks. My mother, hand over her mouth. My father, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Marcus, still frozen in place, still trying to understand how his world had flipped upside down. I thought about all those nights working double shifts. All the family dinners where I'd felt guilty for being tired. All the times I'd apologized for not being available enough, present enough, good enough. All the times I'd set myself on fire to keep them warm. "Yes," I said. "I'm pressing charges." Natalie let out a wail that sounded like an animal in pain. My mother's legs gave out. She sat down hard, right there on the floor, her church dress pooling around her. My father just put his head in his hands. And Marcus was staring at the baby carrier in the corner, the one I hadn't noticed before. Inside it, Natalie's son was sleeping, his tiny fist curled against his cheek, completely unaware that his whole world was falling apart. "There's one more thing," Daniel said into the chaos. He pulled out a final document, this one in a yellow folder. "Mrs. Crawford, I found this during my investigation. I think you need to see it." He handed it to me. My hands were steadier than I expected as I opened it. It was a life insurance policy. In my name. Taken out 6 months ago. With Marcus listed as the sole beneficiary. And the signatures at the bottom weren't mine. The world went very quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, a steady drum that seemed louder than it should be. The life insurance policy felt like it weighed 100 pounds in my hands. $1 million. My signature at the bottom, except it wasn't my signature at all. The loops were wrong, the slant too aggressive. "When was this dated?" My voice came out steady, which surprised me. Daniel pointed to the top of the document. 6 months ago. 2 weeks before you found them together. 2 weeks before I came home early from my shift. 2 weeks before I walked in on them in my bed. I looked up at Marcus. He'd gone absolutely white, his eyes fixed on the paper in my hands like it was a snake about to strike. I can explain. You forged my signature on a life insurance policy." The words felt unreal coming out of my mouth. "For $1 million. Detective Morrison moved closer, her hand resting on her belt near her handcuffs. "Mr. Crawford, I'm going to need you to stay right where you are." "It wasn't supposed to be like this," Marcus said. His voice was shaking now, that tremor he got when he was really scared. I'd heard it only once before, when he'd totaled my car and had to tell me. "It was just supposed to be security. In case something happened to you. You work so many double shifts, you're exhausted all the time," I thought. "You thought what?" I stood up, the portfolio falling from my lap, papers scattering. "That I'd just conveniently die and you'd cash in?" "No. God no, Allison, I would never." "Then why forge my signature?" Detective Morrison's voice was sharp now, professional. "Why not ask your wife to sign it herself?" Marcus's mouth opened and closed. In the corner, Natalie had gone very still, her face blank in a way that made my skin crawl. "Tell them," I said to her. "Tell them whose idea it was." She didn't speak, didn't move, just stood there like a statue, the bailiff still holding her arm. "Mrs. Crawford," Detective Morrison said to me, "when did you first suspect something was wrong?" 3 months ago, I got a notice in the mail about a policy payment I didn't recognize. I thought it was junk mail at first, but something about it bothered me. That's when I hired Daniel. I looked at the accountant, who was calmly organizing the scattered papers. I told him to look at everything, every account, every policy, every transaction. "And you found a pattern," Daniel said. It wasn't a question. The life insurance policy was taken out 2 weeks before the affair was discovered. The major withdrawals from the retirement account started around the same time. The condo was purchased 3 months ago, right around the time Allison filed separation papers. He looked at Detective Morrison. Someone was moving money and assets very deliberately, like they were preparing for something. My father's voice cut through, rough and broken.
Natalie, look at me.
Slowly, my sister turned her head. Tears had dried in tracks down her face, leaving her makeup in streaks. Did you plan to hurt your sister? The question hung in the air like smoke.
No,
Natalie whispered, but her eyes slid away, wouldn't meet his. It wasn't like that. We needed money. For the baby. For our future. And Allison had so much, and she was never home anyway, always working, and Marcus said,
I didn't say to kill her.
Marcus's voice cracked.
I never said that. You said she was in the way.
Natalie's composure shattered like glass. You said if she wasn't around, we could be together. You said we could have the house, the money, everything.
You said.
I was venting. People say things when they're frustrated. I didn't mean actually. He turned to me, his face desperate. You have to believe me. I never wanted you dead.
Never.
Just out of the way, I said softly. Just gone enough that you could have my life without me in it. Officer Martinez stepped forward, pulling out his own handcuffs. Mr. Crawford, I need you to turn around and put your hands behind your back.
What?
No, wait, I didn't do anything. Talking isn't a crime. Conspiracy to commit fraud is, Detective Morrison said. And if we find any evidence that you intended harm to Mrs. Crawford, that's conspiracy to commit murder. The word murder seemed to suck all the air from the room. My mother was still on the floor, rocking slightly, her hands pressed to her mouth. My father stood over her, but he wasn't helping her up. He was just staring at Natalie like he'd never seen her before. I want a lawyer, Natalie said suddenly. Her voice had changed, gone flat and hard. I'm not saying anything else without a lawyer. That's your right, Detective Morrison said. She nodded to the bailiff, who began reading Natalie her Miranda rights. The words were familiar from 1,000 TV shows, but hearing them said about my sister felt surreal. Marcus was still trying to talk as Officer Martinez cuffed him. This is insane. We didn't actually do anything. We just talked about it. That's not illegal. Allison, tell them you're fine. Nothing happened to you. I looked at him, really looked at him. This man I'd loved enough to marry. Who I'd worked myself to exhaustion for. Who I'd trusted with everything I had. You're right, I said quietly. Nothing happened to me. Because I came home early that day. Because I saw what you were. Because I was smart enough to protect myself. I turned to Daniel. The brakes on my car. 3 months ago. You had them checked, right? He nodded, pulling out another folder. The mechanic found evidence of tampering. The brake line had been partially cut, enough that it would fail eventually but not immediately. I have his full report. My mother made a sound like a wounded animal. That's circumstantial, Marcus said, but his voice was weak now. Anyone could have done that. Could have been a random. Your fingerprints are on the brake line housing, Daniel said calmly. The mechanic preserved everything, and there's security footage from Allison's apartment complex showing you near her car at 2 in the morning, 3 days before the brakes failed. The fight went out of Marcus like air from a balloon. His shoulders slumped. I was just checking on her, making sure she was okay. By cutting her brake lines? It wasn't. He looked at Natalie, and something passed between them. Something desperate and ugly. It was supposed to be an accident. Just a small one. Enough that she'd be shaken up, maybe come back home where I could. Where you could control her, Detective Morrison finished. Where you could keep an eye on her while you systematically stole her money and waited for the insurance policy to pay out. Marcus's knees buckled. Officer Martinez caught him, held him up. I want a lawyer too.
I'm sure you do.
Detective Morrison looked at me, her expression soft with something like pity. Mrs. Crawford, do you have somewhere safe to stay tonight?
Family nearby.
I almost laughed. Almost. No family. But I have a friend who's been letting me crash on her couch. I'll be fine. We'll need you to come to the station to make a formal statement. And we'll want to talk to you about witness protection, possibly a restraining order. She doesn't need protection from her own family. My mother finally spoke, her voice rising to a shriek. She'd gotten to her feet somehow, was standing there swaying. This is ridiculous. These are misunderstandings, all of it. Allison, please, you're tearing this family apart. I looked at her, at this woman who'd raised me, who'd braided my hair and made my Halloween costumes and told me I could be anything I wanted, who'd helped my sister steal from me, who'd stood by while they plotted to have me killed. I didn't tear this family apart, Mom. You all did that yourselves. Judge Morrison stood, his robe rustling. This court is adjourned. Officers, please escort the defendants out. Mrs. Crawford, you're free to go. Free to go. The words echoed in my head as I watched them lead Marcus and Natalie away. My sister was crying again, loud hiccuping sobs that made her whole body shake. Marcus walked like a robot, his face blank with shock. My mother tried to follow them, but my father caught her arm. For the first time since this all started, I saw tears on his face.
Let her go, Linda, he said quietly. Let them all go.
But the baby, what about the baby? I'll call child services, he said. We'll figure it out. But right now, you need to be quiet. You need to stop talking before you make this worse. He looked at me over my mother's head. Our eyes met, and I saw everything in his face. Shame. Regret. A desperate kind of sorrow that had no words.
I'm sorry, he mouthed.
I nodded. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement. Daniel Chen was packing up his briefcase, all the evidence neatly filed away. Mrs. Crawford, you'll want to contact a divorce attorney as soon as possible. And probably someone who specializes in victim compensation. You're entitled to recover the stolen funds, plus damages. Thank you, I said. My voice sounded far away. For everything. Just doing my job. He paused, his hand on the briefcase handle. For what it's worth, you're one of the bravest people I've ever worked with. A lot of people wouldn't have had the courage to see this through. After he left, I stood alone in the empty courtroom. The late afternoon sun was coming through the high windows, painting everything in gold. Dust motes drifted in the light, peaceful and slow. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica, my coworker and the only person who'd stuck by me through all of this. How did it go? Do I need to bring ice cream or champagne? I smiled, typing back. Both. Definitely both. Another buzz. That good or that bad? Yes. I walked out of the courthouse into the late afternoon air. It was starting to rain, soft drops that felt cool on my skin. People were hurrying past, newspapers over their heads, running for cover. I just stood there and let it fall. Somewhere behind me, in a police car, my sister and my husband were beginning to understand what they'd lost. My mother was probably calling lawyers, trying to fix the unfixable. My father was likely holding his grandson, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. But I was free. Free from the family that had used me. Free from the marriage that had nearly killed me. Free from the weight of being the responsible one, the good one, the one who always put everyone else first. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The recovered funds were already showing, everything Daniel had managed to trace and freeze. It wasn't all of it, not yet, but it was enough. Enough to start over. Enough to build something new. Enough to finally put myself first. The rain fell harder, soaking through my jacket, plastering my hair to my face. I tipped my head back and laughed, the sound startling a pigeon that had been pecking at the sidewalk. Tomorrow, I'd file the divorce papers. I'd meet with the DA to discuss the charges. I'd start looking for a new apartment, maybe even a small house with a garden where I could plant tomatoes again. But today, right now, in this moment, I just stood in the rain and felt the weight of everything I'd been carrying finally lift from my shoulders. My name is Allison Crawford. And I'm free.